here and now, let's just all give ourselves permission and each other permission to receive the nourishment, the love, the encouragement. I love that word because it's got courage in the middle of it. Encouragement.
Before we dive into this week's episode, let's talk about a brand we both genuinely love, Cytoplan. You've probably heard us mention them before, and that's because their supplements are next level.
Yes, Cytoplan has been part of my routine for a while now. They just get it when it comes to health. Their whole approach is rooted in science and totally in tune with nature.
Exactly. Their formulas are bioeffective, which basically means the nutrients are in forms your body actually recognises and uses properly and at the appropriate levels. Cytoplan is used and trusted by health practitioners across the country. Their formulas are developed by nutritional therapists and backed by over 3 decades of clinical insight. You really can feel the quality when you take them.
Plus, it's not just about what's in the bottle, it's the mission behind it too. Cytoplan is 100% owned by a charitable foundation, which means everything they do is about helping people live well for longer. It's not about trends or quick fixes, it's about real, lasting health.
That is so wonderful to know. And whether it's our energy, perimenopause, menopause itself, sleep, immunity, or just staying on top of your health, they've got you covered. You can also get a free health questionnaire and a consultation by ringing the helpline.
So if you're ready to take ownership of your health, check out Cytoplan, powered by nature, proven by science, and rooted in purpose. We'll pop the link and an exclusive 15% discount code in the show notes. Hello, I'm Karen Mellers.
Hello there, I'm Dr. Rosy Daniel.
You've just tuned in to Alive and Loving It, and we're here to help you bring joy and energy back to your life. Hello, thank you so much for joining us again. It means the world to us that you've switched on and you've sat down with a cup of tea to listen to Rosy and I talk about what we're so passionate about. And this week's episode is a biggie. I don't think we'll get through it actually in 45 minutes, Rosy, because it underpins everything, doesn't it? Underpins all of our health challenges. So today it's episode 19. We are looking into the mind and the health creation principle of stress. One that is probably going to touch most people, I think, Rosy. But tell us first, love, what do we mean by stress?
Well, Karen, I looked in the dictionary, and what it says is that stress is our body's physical and psychological response to any demand or pressure that takes us out of balance. So by which it was saying that the body works all the time to achieve homeostasis, which means same state. So the body is trying to bring us into that nice balance point between being fired up and alert or being nice and rested and relaxed, and being in that sweet spot. However, and of course the point of it is that if you are challenged or pushed or threatened, you need to be able to think very fast and run like hell. Because, in nature, if you're suddenly being chased by a tiger, you've got to get the hell out of there. And then it's either game over, you get caught and eaten, or you get away. And you see in nature programs, animals kind of shaking out the adrenaline and the fear, and then getting back into that softer, let go, restore, relax, regenerate. And I picture this like an infinity sign that we're supposed to flow out into that big extra pressure of performance. But then we're designed to flow back equal and opposite into the other side of that curve so that we can rebalance, so that because, of course, the downside is that when you're in that kind of acute stress, the blood supply is literally sort of taken away from your digestive system and your womb and your ovaries and your internal organs, because digesting your breakfast is completely academic if you're being chased by a tiger. So is healing a cut. So is even healing cancer if you're in, mortal peril because you're being chased. But the problem, as you know, is that most of us feel like we're being chased by that tiger all the time.
So what we're saying then is that stress is a very normal and needed, in the right circumstances, needed state in our body. And that rest and digest is a lovely place to be, also a needed state in our body. And balance is that we can move between those two states when it's right for our body, when it's healthy. So if we've got to run away from a tiger, we need stress, we need to go into fight or flight, and we can get away.
Exactly.
But we need to be able to come back into rest and digest. And it's that bit that's missing.
Exactly.
That we're in fight or flight a lot. And that many of us, Rosie, and I am included here, don't know that we're in that state. Or it's become so normal to us. That's what we think is okay for our body.
Yeah. And so many of us might spend 90% of our time in that high alert state, full of adrenaline, full of cortisol, but actually dip into the other state just very briefly. And it's not the same as sleep, because you can be agitated while you're sleeping. And you can see this from the metabolites of the neuropeptides that are coming out through your urine. When people are very adrenalized, they have something called VMA in the urine, and you can see that they've been tense all night. So it's not equal to sleep. You need to go deep into that place, that deep let go place of safety and security.
Well, I mean, it's so needed, this episode, for me at the moment. I mean, you know that I am at the very end of a 2-year journey living nomadically. Haven't slept in my own bed for nearly 2 years. And during the day, I'm fine. I can function. I'm alert. We've started this podcast. All sorts of wonderful things have happened. But at night, it's difficult to sleep for me. It's difficult for sleep, and you've just hit the nail on the head. It's about safety. Do I feel safe enough to let my body go into that relaxed state so that I can sleep?
Yeah, exactly. And whether it's cortisol, natural steroid that we secrete from our adrenal glands, or whether people are taking steroids from the medics for inflammatory conditions, anybody who's ever tried steroids tells you, you're on the ceiling with, it's really hard to go to sleep when you have steroid, which of course is because nature's made it so that we're alert to that danger. But if we are living lives where we're never feeling out of that danger, then we are in trouble. And lots of people are, for example, who have irritable bowel syndrome or indigestion, constipation, and difficult periods or infertility, difficulty with menopause. It's often because they are in full tilt, sympathetic alert, full of adrenaline and cortisol, and the internal organs of the body are never getting the nourishment that they need. Never, the peristalsis of the digestion rather is never having a chance to find its rhythm.
Well, it's interesting that I'm living this experience at the moment. But what I wanted to ask you about it is that when I was living in Derbyshire and I had a house and I'd lived there a long time and I was doing the same job, I was still in a state of stress and anxiety and worry. So I know this journey that I've taken has heightened that, but it's also lessened it. Because now I think when I go back to a house and a stable place and a stable job, that doesn't now stress me anymore. I'm not anxious by that. So it's almost like I pushed myself to an edge, and I'm feeling the stress, but in somehow it's expanded me. I've grown through it. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Well, totally. And I think you're talking about resilience there. But, you are doing one of the most stressful things that's known, so all those things like getting married, getting divorced, bereavement, and house moves are up on the top deck of stress. Because, of course, we need to be rooted. And in taking these 2 years to be two drifters and to be out there on the road, you've actually taken that step of putting yourself into that place of unrootedness or insecurity. So there's going to be a baseline, where's home kind of feeling going on in your being, even if your mind is saying, oh, this is very cool being a drifter. Your root is going to be saying, I want a root. Where's home? Yeah.
But a lot of us have got into that state where we're at home, we've done the same job for most of our lives, we're in the same community, we've got the same friends, and yet we're still in this state of stress. Rosie, why does that happen?
Why? Well, because there are lots of different kinds of stress, but there are two biggies. There's the external stress of a bus coming towards us, or, a crash or whatever it might be, something that's actually coming at us. But then where that leaves off, those of us, many, myself included, take over with internal, what I call self-stress. So there are so many drivers of self-stressing. The big ones are being good enough, approval seeking, people pleasing, setting ourselves huge targets, ambitious targets, and actually frightening ourselves, risk taking and not really looking out for ourselves. Is this situation safe? Is this job safe? Are these people safe? Can my nervous system sensitivity cope with the mentality of this bunch of people or this pub or this, whatever it might be? Because, we are sometimes so sort of loving and giving that we're not really thinking about, actually, is this safe for me? And definite note to self. I mean, I've taken risks in my life which have taken me into real danger one way or the other with things I've done. I've always said that I've had more confidence than skill, And I opened one of those coffee books, sort of that have kind of wise words in them. And I opened this book and it said, any stress in your life at this time is entirely of your own making. Fair cop.
Yeah, which of course you argued against.
No, I had to say, yeah, that is a fair cop, because I said, oh, we'll do this project and this project and this project, and because I can, and I don't look at what the process will involve or what will it cost in money or time, and then of course we're all prey to the media saying, if you want to be really cool, buy this car, go on this holiday, wear this frock, have this perfume. And so we're all of us being pushed to spend more, get into debt, and so on.
Well, I know that's what attracted me to you, was your risk-taking, because I was on the other side of the self-stressing, of almost to a point where taking me away from places, not going places, staying safe, just because of the possibility of something bad happening. So you've got the two ends there. You've got risk-taking, not seeing the danger, and seeing too much danger and doing nothing. Yeah. Maybe that's why we're a good combination, love. We've met in the middle.
Well, maybe it's catching, because you've been taking risks for the last 2 years, setting off in your car with your man, putting your whole relationship on the line, putting your car on the line, landing up in places. I can remember one little podcast you did from you turned off the road and you're saying, I'm frightened. I feel really frightened.
And I keep saying to you, are we slowing down, Rosie? Are we doing less projects now? Oh, we're good for each other. But how can we tell then that we are in a state of stress? Because I had no awareness of it when I first started thinking about this topic.
Okay. So there was a cardiologist called Dr. Nixon who created something called the Nixon stress curve, which is terribly helpful. And because it's sort of, it's on one axis, you've got stress going up, and on the other, you've got performance on the other axis. So what he's plotting is that your stress goes up, and actually in the first bit, your performance increases. So we need, and at that stage, it's called challenge, and it's good and it's enlivening and it stretches us. Okay. Yeah. And that's called Eustress, as of in Eustress. And then you get to that peak point where it's just perfect. You've got the right amount of challenge to bring out the very best in you. Mm-hmm. But then, as many of us know, you keep pushing harder and you more this, more that, more projects, more work, more money, etc. And you start to go over that and you start to find you're doing more but achieving less. And you can get to that point down that curve where you're at a level of stress where your performance is really falling off. You're going into burnout. You can't think straight, and you can collapse in that state if you allow yourself to get. And just to say that the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest, restore, regenerate side, is really all about the vagus nerve, and we have this two main branches, the ventral and the dorsal branches of the vagus nerve, and in extreme threat we can have what's called a dorsovagal reaction, where we literally collapse. Yeah. I mean, people can literally collapse onto the floor. Some people call that playing dead, or just being losing ourselves. And I'm sure this will be ringing bells with people listening. I can remember a point when I was had taken on way too much in the job running the Bristol Cancer Help Centre, now Penny Bron, where I was the medical director, the chief executive, the spokesperson. I was teaching the education courses. I was running programs. Oh, and I had two little kids, etc. And there were days I'd go into my office and I'd look at the desk and I'd look at the computer and I could not think what to do next. I was just completely blank, and very overwhelmed. I mean, obviously very, very scared, because if I'm the boss, I'm the one who's supposed to know what is the order of priority. But have you ever tipped into that kind of state, Karen, do you think?
Yes, and as I'm thinking about it, I started my career in IT, and I learned the term for it when a computer goes into that state where there's too many instructions and not enough capacity. It's called thrashing.
So thrashing.
Yes, that's what it's called. And it stuck with me because I hit that point probably about 15 years later. Yeah. 2 young kids. Michael, my husband, worked away. I had a full-time job, more and more responsibility. And I don't know, Rosie, whether it was the amount of work that I was doing, because actually I'm doing more in my life now. So I've got greater capacity now.
Yeah.
But it was on top of the self-stressing.
Yeah.
Because everything had to be perfect. And I was responsible for the whole world and everybody's well-being in it, my whole team and the company and the customers. And so it was that self-stressing was there right from being young. And then when I took on more and more external work, without clearing the self-stressing, that's when I went into that state.
Well, it's multi-layered, because when you think when we're younger, there's the stress of, do I look good enough? Am I attractive? Am I going to find my mate? And who am I? And what am I going to be? And, so there's all that stuff going on, taking up quite a bit of bandwidth. And then obviously, as we're moving into careers, there's all that natural concern about, are we good enough? Are we? And I think one person at the centre took me to one side one day and said, the thing about you, Rosie, is you have lots of bright ideas for this place, but you never sit down and work out the process. You never sit down and work out what is it going to take, how much time, how much energy, how much money. And, you're coming in every day with, we can do this and we can do this, but somebody's got to actually pick up the work of that. So I call it being from the Department of Bright Ideas. It's you think you're being brilliant, but actually it's a pain in the butt for anybody that works with you.
Yeah, that's one of the key things is unpicking all of this. If we're going to get into now, ways that you can start to reduce your stress and what we're calling moving into the healing state. Unpicking it all is the clue, and learning about yourself. So it's a fantastic journey from this point onwards, of the point of this, as you said, just tipping over, where it's a good challenge and we start going down the other side. And usually it does take somebody to tap you on the shoulder, because awareness of it is really difficult.
Yeah, and I'm laughing about it now, but to anybody listening who knows they're in that place, my heart absolutely goes out to you, because it is scary. Because usually, if we're going into that place, we have been people who've taken on a lot, being brave, are doing an amazing job. Mm-hmm. And it usually is paired with that. I talk often about being the responsible child or the responsible adult who takes things on because they don't really believe anybody else can do it. But we have to recognize, we have to stop, we have to put the brakes on. And it can often take a radical, when we get to that stage where we're starting to get physical symptoms of stress, then obviously, that can mean we need to take actual absence from work, or do, have a sabbatical, do something different. And then often we need to just take the pruning shears out like a good gardener and have a radical prune of the projects, of the vision, of the initiatives that we might be taking on board. And if we apply that to a mother and children, does your kid really have to go to violin, horse riding, and cricket? It's and I call this the more bud. We know about more with addiction, more alcohol, more drugs, more money, more sex, more shopping, more. This is very prevalent in society. We've all been brought up thinking more is better. And, that kind of, you can walk, run. Oh, you can run, jump. Oh, you can jump, do the trapeze. And so giving lots of prizes and rewards for achievement as opposed to being. But maybe we should talk a bit about the physical side of it and how we can recognize that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is, if somebody's been in this high stress state for such a long time, it becomes normal. And if we're running at that high speed and we're mainly up here in our head, it's very difficult to tell when you are in high stress. It can actually, Rosie, feel quite nice, because it feels like you've got energy, particularly when you're younger as well. Yeah. It's more, there's more energy to go at. So it can feel good. You can feel like you've got lots of energy. What really makes me cringe now is I see people in fight and flight and they're exercising in that place as well, because that's even more stress on the body. So, but it can be really difficult to spot. So what are we checking? If we're checking in with ourselves, what are we looking for? What physical symptoms are we looking for?
There's loads. Your heart might be racing. Your blood pressure might be up. You might be breath holding. You might be sweating. you might be starting to panic and have panic attacks. You may be, finding yourself unusually nervous about a meeting or a conversation, or just stuff that you can usually take in your stride. And then the physical stuff, you might be finding it difficult to sleep. You might find your periods are all over the shop, or that you've lost your libido, that you're getting ratty in relationships and conversations, or all of the above. I can see people nodding.
Yes. Every single one of
Tick,
those.
tick, tick. Yeah.
Every single one of those before that moment of, hang on a minute, enough, I cannot do that anymore.
Mm.
And that can be a really scary moment, because actually you named it earlier on in the conversation. You said, it is mine. And what that moment you became aware that it is you that's self-stressing. That can be hard to face, can't it?
Very hard to face, because, a lot of our default is to go into victim space. They are doing it to me. My boss is doing it to me. The taxman's doing it to me, or whatever. But we are actually the ones who are living the life we're living, making the choices that we're making, albeit that we may be being unconsciously pushed through marketing and media and parental expectations, societal expectations to be being more, bigger, better, stronger. I mean, I know a lot of it in my own case came from trying to get attention in a family of 4 kids with very busy parents, and achievement was the gold dust. If you did well with something, then you'd get attention. So, but I think that's rife throughout the whole of society.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so from this moment where you realize, actually, I'm doing this to myself, and it's me that's got to change, there can be a period of grief at that point, because, what have I done to myself? What would my life have been like if I wasn't this stressed? And also grief for the person that you were when you lived in that way. So there's a point of becoming a new version of yourself.
Yeah.
And a lot of people call it a breakdown. I call it a breakthrough. I mean, I think, when I see it with some of my clients, I'm like, yes, we've got to the point now of truth, and we can move forward and really properly heal from here. So what can we do at that moment where we're thrashing and we're aware that we're in self-stress and we know we have to change? How do we help ourselves, Rosie?
Well, I mean, an awful lot of that self-stressing behavior comes from low self-esteem. If I'm trying to gain approval of others, or be as good as others, or keep up with others, it's because I believe I am not enough. Or if I'm striving for more money, I believe there's not enough. So, and a very big thing is to name and deal with the not enough side of life. And this is where mentorship and health coaching comes in, because what the mentors are providing, first of all, is unconditional positive regard, encouragement, motivation, but all the time reflecting the self-worth and getting people to recognize what's right about themselves, what's good about themselves, what are their innate qualities. And this is not to do with how many O-levels or A-levels you've got. Maybe it's because you're extremely kind or extremely patient, or, whatever it might be. Getting people focusing on it's obviously all self-love, but getting to the heart of having a positive relationship with yourself. Now, of course, there are a whole bunch of steps in between here and there where we can do the king, I think, in when people are reaching that state of panic and breakdown, is the breath.
Yeah.
Because the breath is the link between the mind and the body. So when we are frightened, we take tiny little breaths at the top of the in-breath, just in a panicky way. When we're very sad and depressed, we breathe out and we take those sips at the bottom of the out breath. But if you can start to breathe in a measured, counted, balanced way, just even sort of breathing into 6, holding, breathing out to 6, holding, breathing in. And if 6 is too much, just even 4, just to actually be breathing fully in and out. That tells the body all is well. And that instantly calms the heart, it calms the blood pressure, it calms the adrenals, and it can take you out of panic. There's an American website called Alo Moves, alomoves.com, full of skinny people in lycra doing lots of impossible yoga poses. But it's got a mindfulness section, and within it, it's got a breathwork section with people teaching pranayama. So in yoga, prana is breath, yama is work. And this is the ancient science of how we can tame, master, self-regulate the body-mind through breath. And honestly, it's a lifesaver. And I've had clients who've taken that app into the loo at work and sort of gone into the breath work bit and literally had themselves breathed by one of these teachers online out of panic.
Well, and it's achievable as well, because in that state, you're probably not in a position to make massive change in your life. Some of those changes are going to be needed so that the self-stressing is removed. But right at that critical moment, it is possible to breathe.
Yeah.
Some people still find it difficult because the mind is so busy and it pulls them away. But that's why it's called a practice, isn't it? You do
For sure.
have to practice.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if they, one of the yoga techniques is alternate nostril breathing, where you block one nostril, you breathe in through the other, you hold, you breathe out, you breathe in again through the same nostril, hold, breathe out. There are people on YouTube who are teaching alternate nostril breathing. It is the most calming breath technique ever. But there are many. And then, of course, there are relaxation tapes. There's learning to meditate. There's exercise, takes a lot of tension out of the body and lifts our endorphins. But the biggie is to really, you use the analogy of computers and thrashing, but look at the computer software. What are your underlying beliefs that are driving your behavior?
Yeah.
So, for example, the responsible person might feel, well, I am the only responsible person who can run this department of the NHS. Or, I am the only person that can reliably do our family accounts. That's actually not true. But it's a belief that you're running, which keeps you working. I had one coaching client, an NHS manager, who was working from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. at work, coming home, cooking a meal, working again from 9 till 11, going to bed with her husband for 4 hours, getting up again at 3 a.m. to do 2 more hours work till 5 a.m., having a nap, and then starting the cycle again. And she was so convinced that she was the only person that could keep the NHS going somewhere in her belief system. I know that sounds nuts, but that's what she was living. And
And these are hard patterns to get out of, because the ego is really connected into that actually it's all on me and I'm the only person who can do it. When you realize the truth, which is why working with a mentor is so important, when they reflect that back to you and you eventually see, and I'm talking from personal experience here, that actually it isn't the truth that I'm the only person that can do this. It's a shock to the system. But that again is the starting of rewiring the patterns in the brain.
But is that the ego, or is that the inner child? Because very often those beliefs, I'm the only person around here that's responsible, you might have learned that belief when you were 4 or 5 or 6. When we make neural patterns, it's a process called recruitment of neurons to a given pattern. So if I have that experience over and over and over again as a child, that my parents have lost it, they're stoned or they're drunk or they're fighting each other, and I've got to somehow look after my siblings and little brother and cook the dinner and, stop them killing each other. You've been hardwired for a long time so you have to recruit a lot of neurons going in the other direction. So we get people to change a belief like I am the only responsible person that can run the NHS to I am surrounded by many capable people who can run the NHS. And I am part of a team, I will do my part, but no more.
And I'm doing my best.
And I'm doing my best, and I'm doing, so on.
Yeah.
So we spin these beliefs around and get people to repeat them before they go to sleep, before they relax, before they meditate. And the not enough thing, I can remember somebody, because I was stressing about there's just not enough time to do this, there's not enough money, and they just said to me, there is plenty of time. I have plenty of time. I have plenty of money for everything I need, which turns out to be the truth. Because I kept on repeating it to myself. So you're putting in new beliefs to you're pinning down the driver of a given level of insecurity or stress or and spinning it around. But that needs consciousness, awareness, support, and this is why mentorship is so fantastic, because you've got somebody there who can spot every time you come up with pop out these big old limiting beliefs. They can say, aha, what did you just say?
I wouldn't be without it. I wouldn't be without a mentor. I think one of my big realizations, Rosie, in my self-stressing was I can heal myself. I can do this myself. I don't need anybody else. That came in really strongly with my back operation, because I remember not wanting to consciously be a victim. So I will do this myself. I will heal myself. It then became very difficult to ask for help. And there was a lot of shame around asking for help. But actually now I know the truth is it's much easier to do it with support. And I wouldn't be without my health angels now that I go to. When the old patterns start to come back, I know who to go to. And I do it quicker now. But that used to be really difficult for me, asking for help.
I think the asking for help and the receiving, if you don't believe you deserve it and you don't believe you're good enough, then asking for help is very hard. So here and now, let's just all give ourselves permission and each other permission to receive the nourishment, the love, the encouragement. I love that word because it's got courage in the middle of it. Encouragement. I mean, I can remember, for example, with singing, I love to sing, and particularly harmony singing. But it was all about performing originally. And what's that about? Attention, and having an audience. And I had a breakthrough moment that were in the middle of my life when I thought, actually, I can sing for myself. I can sing for my own pleasure and enjoyment, not to perform and get attention.
Wow. I mean, this is years of working on ourselves and working with others that have reflected back. So you learn to understand yourself. One thing I'm just tuning into is that we had some feedback last week from one of the listeners, Rosie, who said that listening to this podcast, she found herself in tears. Now that's a real sign that you've hit a place within you. You've hit a nerve, which is a place that is ready to be healed. I mean, definitely listen to that. If you find that there's some emotion when you're listening to somebody or you're talking about a particular time in your life or a subject, if you hit the tears, there's still some emotion there to be released, to then have another layer of healing.
And I think you can hit tears when something is so beautiful. You know, I think when the healer's talking about, or Joe Dahl talking about moving into alignment with spirit and moving that kind of locus of control to spirit as opposed to herself, not locus of control, but, you know, that sort of authority from that higher perspective is so beautiful. That also brings tears. But, you know, while we're on this subject of stress, what I want to emphasize as a mind-body doctor, which is how I really identify myself the most strongly, is the role of this in illness and disease and in what we're seeing going on out there.
Yeah.
Because stress, it manifests in so many stress-related illness. So cancer is definitely a stress-related illness, because when we have all that adrenaline and cortisol flowing, it reduces our immunity. Because as I've mentioned, if you're running away from a tiger, you know, healing a cut isn't a biggie, or even healing cancers. So, you know, when we put up with long-term stress, chronic stress, we are putting ourselves at risk. Okay. It's all part of cardiac disease, because when we're adrenalized and the heart is beating fast, and you can have arrhythmias, you can have all kinds of problems going on with the cardiovascular system. It's got a huge role in asthma and respiratory problems, because when we're full of adrenaline, our bronchioles can constrict. I don't have to tell anybody with asthma that. They know that they start to get anxious. They hear people fighting in the house. Everything starts to constrict. And, you know, things like fertility, digestive problems, I've already mentioned. So many conditions originate out of this place of stress because we can't get back into that balance point of homeostasis.
So would you say then, whatever disease or symptoms are coming up, one of the first things to do to help yourself is these things you're suggesting to bring yourself back into rest and digest?
Definitely.
So that you give your system the best chance of healing itself.
Definitely. And this is why all the Oriental practices like yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong are so completely brilliant, because they're all to do with finding that point of balance. You know, where you can sit in peace, where you can meditate, where you can actually come into alignment. You're not pushing, pulling, you know, you're coming to that point of balance.
Yeah. Well, wouldn't it be great to get these things on prescription? Which does just remind me that I think I read a few weeks ago that being in nature, now doctors are prescribing that.
Yeah.
Because being in nature or being in water, you know, that has a wonderful effect on lowering you into rest and digest.
Yeah. And so again, awareness, you're very always keen, Karen, to bring our focus to our awareness, is just notice where you feel out of balance, where you feel frightened or tense, or, you know, get that you're starting to get upset. Notice where you feel calm, in the forest, by the sea, in certain buildings, around certain people who are in a calmer, because we've talked a bit about this, we entrain with other people's energy fields. And so when we're around an alpha energy of somebody who's very angry, cross, irritable, everybody starts to go out of whack. When we're in, that's a medical term, by the way, when we're in the presence of somebody who's loving, calm, funny, you know, everybody starts to breathe and relax. So that's about being aware of our own impact, but also the impact of others with whom we work or live, or even our partners.
And that co-regulation with animals as well. I mean, one of the first things I do if I'm upset is sit on the sofa, and little Lily, my Cavapoo, will come and lay on me, literally on me, and be asleep. And I'm just watching her rhythm, in her breathing. She's just...
I'm going to give you a true confession here. I once lived with a lovely carpenter who was really earthy, kind of solid, kind of person. I'd come in from work as a young GP, kind of like stressed out of my mind, and rabbit, and lots of cuddles and all the rest of it. By the morning, I was lovely and calm, and he'd go out all kind of ratty. So I think I absolutely used him as a human mop to mop up my stress and distress. But
yes, like a lovely hot water bottle.
But self-regulation is the one, isn't it? If we can learn the skills to take ourselves, and we're going to have a thrilling episode with Dr. Alan Watkins coming up, who I think is Britain's leading mind-body doctor. He is working with helping people to understand what goes on in their emotions that takes us into these places of fear, and to get deeper and deeper into that self-awareness and self-regulation. That's where we're going, but that's not denying our humanity and our pain and our need for each other. But It's just starting to give us some tools to be able to move ourselves, not to feel the victim of our state, just to become the master or the mistress.
Yeah, to heal from it, heal from it. And that is next week. And we've just done our planning session, and it's going to be a really juicy one, an extra long one, because there is so much information to share. So we're wonderful for you to tune in again and with us next week on Alive and Loving It. Thank you, Rosy. That was so special.
And you too, Karen. Bless your heart. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Alive and Loving It. We really hope that today's conversation has sparked your passion and showed you ways to open up into the vibrant life that's possible for you.
Absolutely, Rosy. I mean, we do have to remember that transformation begins with love, and that is self-love, love for others, and love for our beautiful planet. When you embrace love and you just allow yourself to receive as much as you give, you unlock the fullest potential of your life.
That is the truth, Karen. And we're here to support you every step of the way on your journey. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, please join our community and check out our trainings and our services, such as my Dr. Rosy Daniel clinic and Karen's beautiful women's circles and retreats, and the events where we can all go deeper together. And do please send us your feedback. We want to hear your ideas for the podcast, who you'd like us to interview, and the questions you want us to ask and get answered. Through the contact page on our website, just go to aliveandlovingit.org.
I've really enjoyed reading them. But when you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter and updates. And what about following us on Instagram as well? We are at Alive and Loving It Community. Once you've signed up to the newsletter, you'll receive extra notes from today's show and more inspiration to help you live your most vibrant life.
Thank you for being with us. Keep shining, stay true to yourself, and remember, this is your time to live your fullest, healthiest life.
So until next time, keep doing what you love most in life. I know Rosy and I will be. We're so excited to connect with you on the next episode of Alive and Loving It. And we welcome you with open hearts to our Alive and Loving It community.